Leslie. Okay. I'm Leslie Spry, and I'm presenting on totem poles. So I'm going to go over the significance of totem poles, the different kinds of totem poles, the tools that they use, the crests that are on the totem poles and their meanings, and about model totem poles. So a totem pole is designed to tell a story, tell a family story. It contains their family lineage, their history. They tell stories in the way that they're organized. They're also some are to welcome guests, and some of them also show the status of chiefs. So there's house posts, house frontal poles, grave markers, mortuary poles, and welcome figures. So the house posts would be on the inside. They would be supporting the beams of a longhouse. And then the frontal poles are on the outside of the longhouse, and they usually contain the entrance and the exit to the house. And then grave markers are just placed, where people are died or... and then the mortuary boxes are on the totem pole up at the top. They would have a mortuary box, and that would contain the remains of the dead. And then this here is a welcome figure, and their hands are usually extended in a sign of welcoming. So these are the tools, but it kind of starts out, a knowledgeable person would go out to pick a tree to be carved, and they want straight grain and very few knots. And what they do is they do controlled burning, and then they chisel it as well. And they pray to the gods that the tree will fall in the right direction because they choose a tree close to the sea or a river so that it's easily transportable once it's brought down. And once they bring it down in the water, they'll transport it by canoe. And so some of the tools they use are chisels and knives and adzes and stone hammers. Some of the wings are supported by wedges. And then their paints and their dyes were ground up minerals, and then they would add a glutinous substance like salmon eggs, and it would bind them together. And that was their paint. And then their paint brushes were porcupine bristles. And once European explorers arrived, more modern tools were used. So the crests are really what everybody sees on the totem poles. They tell the story. They tell the interactions between nature and how a family would obtain a family crest. And then crests can be inherited. They're passed down. So any of the descendants can use an ancestor's crest. You can obtain them through marriage. You can use a crest as payment for services. If you kill your enemy, you can also obtain their crest. And there are many different creatures for crests or figures. So the most powerful is the thunderbird. And the story is that with the bat of his wings, thunder is created, and with the blink of his eye, lightning strikes. And from our guest speaker, Joe Martin, he said that with the thunderbird, if his wings are open, the crest on his chest is of male ancestry. And when the wings are closed, it's female ancestry. And he's most identifiable by the curled tufts of feathers on top of his head. And so this is the Colus, and this is the younger brother of the Thunderbird. And his tufts on his head are horizontal, so that would be probably the main difference between them. And his feathers or down is snow white in color, and it says that he gets overheated, so he can shed his coat and transform into human. And he has superhuman strength, so he would help raise like the house posts or build the longhouses. And then this is Hakwa. I'm not sure how to say that. So he's a mythical bird, and his chiseled beak cracks open skulls, and he devours the human brains. So this is Sisweedle, or I'm not sure how to say this one either. Sisweedle? Okay. So he's a supernatural serpent, and he can be good or evil. And if you look at him, get a glare from him, touch him, it can cause death. But when it's painted over or carved over a house or an entrance, he's considered a protector. A lot of the warriors would go into war wearing a belt or something with his symbol on him, and they were considered protected. And he can be displayed in a horizontal, U-shaped, or a coiled shape. And he's always going to have a face in the middle. So this is Sanakwa. This is the wild woman of the woods. And the legend is that if the kids roam too far from the village, she'll capture them, put them in her basket, and take them back and eat them. And we call her now Sasquatch. That's what we know as Sasquatch. So these are watchmen, and they're considered protectors. They're usually carved in groups of 3, like they are here. And they are said to warn the chief of visitors or alert somebody if someone arrives. And their tall hats symbolize the status of the chief. So bears are identified by their broad, flat snouts. They have prominent ears, but they're most identifiable by the large canines and their big claws. And they're considered guardians and protectors, and that they're very human-like. And they're human-like because they can stand on their hind 2 feet. They pick berries and eat salmon, and then they also take care of their young. And beavers are said to be energetic and hardworking, and they're very busy. And so they rarely talk to humans, and when they do, it's good to listen because they give very good advice. And with one slap of their tail can cause a natural disaster, and they're most easily identifiable by their large front teeth and their cross-hatch pattern of their tail. And eagles are intelligence, or represent intelligence, peace, vigilance, healing, foresight, and power, and they're powerful hunters. They're most oftenly carved next to or near a salmon, because that's their favorite food. They have the downward curved beaks, no ears, and their wings are usually represented with U-shapes. So I chose this for the frog because he's kind of very rare. I didn't find him as often, but they're known as very good communicators, and they're very knowledgeable. They're adaptable because they live on land and water. They're identifiable by lidless eyes, their lack of ears, tail, and teeth, and they have long webbed toes, and often they are carved with their tongue out because representing their good communication skills. And so the orcas are devoted to family, and they are often said that the great chiefs are reincarnated into orcas. And so they are always carved with a long dorsal fin. They have lots of teeth. They have their blowhole and small pectoral fins, and often in their blowhole is another figure carved or painted. And then they can also be considered supernatural beings, and when they are, they would be carved with multiple dorsal fins, usually 5. And then we have the raven, and he has a straight but not overly long beak, and then he's usually carved with his wings still on his side, not extended out. And they say that he's very creative and innovative, and he's crafty, so he often gets into trouble, and then that humans owe him for their discovery, that the raven discovered them. And he can transform to many different creatures as well, not just human. So this is where I ended my talk about crust. There's many more. You can have suns, stars, mosquitoes. They have a lot more. There's the sea otter as well. But these were the ones that I found most often. So I wanted to talk about model totem poles because that's kind of where we're at today. People don't get to just take a big tree model or a big tree home with them. So model totem poles started in 1880s to 1890s with the influx of tourism, and they became popular souvenirs because of their portable size. So the most popular model totem pole that was sold had the Thunderbird on top with the bear underneath holding a human. And a couple of the theories on why it was so popular is because it looks like a cross, and so they thought maybe with the European religions. Or they also said just because the bird looks so majestic, like he's about to take off in flight, and so that was another popular reason. So during this time, we all know that the First Nations people are being oppressed, and this was a way for them to sustain their identity, and it also was a way to support themselves financially. And so there's often discriminated as being kish, which is another word for knockoff. So there's a lot of reputable carvers still out there that know the meaning of totem poles, and they're carved for a reason. But they did have a lot of totem poles shipped over from Japan that were supposed to be original, and they were ivory, but they were really just bone. So So, into my conclusion, I would say that they are beautiful works of art, and they're still admired in parks, at schools, and they still make for popular souvenirs. And the tools and techniques have changed with time, but they're still carved by carvers that know the meanings and keep their value. And that's it.